Shalom Aleichem, dear friends. There's a couple of people that are still making their way in, so we'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started. Those that are here with us live and in person, and those Baruch Hashem that are joining us online. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot going on, so we'll give it another minute or two, and then we will be able to get started. We'll make sure that is up and running, and we'll just share this. Okay, all right, ladies and gents. Those that are joining us online, you are missing out on the wonderful snacks provided, Baruch Hashem, by Doctors Schleger and Barinholtz, who are the original inspiration of this Chabura. So a big shukach to Doctors Schleger and Barinholtz. This is all in Yosef. Baruch Hashem, dozens of people that are joining us online for this Chabura as well. This is a long-term commitment to some degree or another. Yeah, don't worry, we're not going to hold you prisoner. But I'm hoping that this is going to be something that you're going to say, "Wow, this is kedai. This is something worthwhile." Yeah. It's starting a new Chabura. We should make it l'chaim. And this should be in the schus of all of the Chabura that are here to learn. L'chaim tov and shalom, and it's also the beginning of Chodesh Cheshvan. So Chodesh Tov, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol nהיה b'dvaro. Okay. I would like to a little bit begin with some words of introduction. It's hard to have introductions to Nevi'im. That's how do you introduce the Nevi'im? even the concept is a little bit daunting to just even think about introducing the concept of what it means to learn Navi, and certainly Sefer Yehoshua. But by way of introduction, it's kedai to at least grasp why we should be learning this, why this limud is something that is so essential to our lives. You'll see there's a lot of things that we're going to be perusing, a lot of things that we're going to be using. The useful links tab has alatorah.org, which is all the classical commentaries, and Safari, which has all the classical commentaries, and a lot more other connections. We'll be using some of those as well as a bunch of PDF Sfarim. These are all available for free online at HebrewBooks.org, many of which we're going to be using and perusing. There's a lot. I'm opting for a online version of source sheets more than a text-based, paper-based version of source sheets. One, because that way we can constantly update it, makes it dynamic. Two, because that way the Chabura that are online will always be able to follow. And three, because then I can give you more material without feeling bad about the trees. So we'll be able to share as much information as possible. But let's introduce short introduction to learning Navi. I think we should start with the Gemara in Masechet Megillah, Daf Yudalad Amud Aleph. Says the Gemara like this: Kedetanya is a brisa. Harbe Nevi'im amdu lahem leYisrael. There were many Nevi'im for the Jewish people. This is after the Gemara has told us that there were 48 named Nevi'im and 7 named Nevi'ot, right? Prophets and prophetesses. How many Nevi'im were there for the Jewish people? So the period of Nevuah largely lasts from Avram Avinu until the return of the Jewish people to build the second Beis Hamikdash. It was more or less the period of Nevuah. Meaning Nevuah certainly existed before that, but in terms of our count of Jewish Nevi'im, like is with Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were Jewish. There's such a thing as a Jew before Matan Torah, but okay. Let's say from the days of Avram all the way until the days of the Churban, or the beginning, the Binyan by Sheni. So we're talking about Avram Avinu was born in what year? This is an important year to know. The Jewish year that Avram Avinu was born. 1948, right? Avram Avinu was born in the Jewish year 1948. Right? I don't know if you make things coincidences or not coincidences with the Gregorian calendars, but no. But in our calendar, Avram Avinu was born in the year 1948. Took a few hundred years until the Jewish people were in Mitzrayim and they left Mitzrayim and then got to Eretz Yisrael. Built the first Beis Hamikdash. It took about another 370 years until we built the first Beis Hamikdash. 410 years of the first Beis Hamikdash. Another 70 years of exile. And that concludes the more than 1,000 years of Nevuah. More than 1,000 years that the Jewish people had Nevuah. How many Nevi'im were there? So the Gemara lists 48. 48 Nevi'im. That doesn't sound like a lot of Nevi'im. Says the Gemara, no. They were Kiflayim Keyotze Mitzrayim. Double the amount than those who left Egypt. How many Jews left Egypt? So, 600,000 males from the age of 20 to 60. Certainly at least as many females, plus elderly people, younger people. Conservative estimate, probably around 3 million. Probably around 3 million Jews left Mitzrayim. And if the Gemara is telling us that the amount of Nevi'im that we had was Kiflayim Keyotze Mitzrayim, so we're talking a good 6 million Nevi'im in the millennia plus of Nevuah. And yet, we have only 48 and 7 prophetesses. So, how do you make a determination of which Nevuah gets recorded in the book? Which are the Nevuahs that we have in Nevi'im? Why do we have certain things in Nevi'im and other things? There were millions more Nevi'im. And yet, the Nevuahs that we have are short. It's a short book relative to, I suppose, how much Nevuah happened. Says the Gemara, the Nevuahs that were recognized, accepted by the Nevi'im, by the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, as things that were necessary for all generations. Those are the things that were written, and the things that were not needed for all generations were not written. Yeah.
Navi means that one has to utter something for public consumption. Can one not just be Navi b'machnes, whatever that means?
Yeah.
Essentially, so who says it should have been written down? In other words, maybe most of those Nevi'im were just engaging directly with God, and there wasn't any need to write it. It wasn't meant for.
So some certainly were personal, but some even it seems to be were national or were important for a group of people at a group of time. Certain period of time, certain group of people, this Nevuah was important for you. However, the Nevi'im that we have in the book are apparently not just relevant to those people in those times. They're relevant to all Jews at all times, meaning us now. And that's important. Rashi is mighty. Rashi explains there on the Gemara. Rashi says, what is a Nevuah she'utzur chol hadaros? Says Rashi, lilmad tshuva oy hara'ah. The goal of Nevi'im, the things that are written down, is lilmad tshuva oy hara'ah. Is to teach us tshuva or hara'ah, or education. To instruct us, to educate us. That's what we're gaining from learning Nevi'im. We're learning the world of tshuva and the world of hara'ah. This is not a small thing. And apparently, this that is tshuva and hara'ah is for all generations. That which the Nevi'im wrote down is essential for us now. Now, Reb Tzadok, we're going to spend a lot of time in and around pieces that Reb Tzadok wrote, especially in Sefer Yehoshua, because he wrote amazing Torahs in Sefer Yehoshua. Reb Tzadok probably has the most comprehensive, amongst all the last 200 or so years, Reb Tzadok HaKohen has the most elaborate mahalach in Sefer Yehoshua, and probably spilt the most ink on this Sefer. So we're going to spend some time in Sefer Yehoshua with Reb Tzadok. But Reb Tzadok quotes this Gemara. This is in Sidkas HaTzadik in Ois Ayin Beis, number 72. He says, see if we can zoom in on that a little bit. There we go. There we go. Cool. Says Reb Tzadok, you see that up on the screen. It says, Nevuah that were important for all generations, that are necessary. That's what it means, important, necessary. Those are things that are written, and the things that were not necessary for all generations were not written down. He says, V'im kain, if this is so, al karchach, by definition, per force. Oisam sifuri hamosin heim tzirchon adereth, all the stories of all the miracles that are recorded by the Nevi'im are necessary for all generations. That's strange. We're going to see some miracles in the Sefer. We're going to see miracles like the walls of Yericho falling down, the sun and the moon stopping in the sky. Why is that relevant to me? I am not Yehoshua, I'm not the miracle worker, says Reb Tzadok. He says, however, he says, even though those miracles happened for a moment in time, it opened doorways. It's opening doorways, those miracles, and that's what it means. It's necessary for us. He says, Kikol Mose Eliyahu Hayu Al Pi Torah. Everything that Eliyahu Navi did was all in accordance with the Torah. V'al Yadeh, he says, Derech Mashal Yirir Sa'ish Al Yadei Chidish Torah Shechidish Lahatir Habama. The fire that Eliyahu brought down, we're going to get there when we get to Sefer Malachim. He says, V'chol Mose Elisha Al Yadei Tefillah. Everything that Eliyahu did through Torah and everything that Elisha did through Tefillah. Like the Gemara says at the end of the Megillah, Elisha performed all of these miracles that he did through davening. He says, when he achieved double what Eliyahu achieved, we'll get there. He says, you can achieve more through Tefillah than Torah. It says, so says Reb Tzadok. He says, Aval mikol makom ma shal pi Torah gadol. Sorry. We're going to understand what he says. If you spend a lot of time on this, you're going to understand. We're going to spend a lot of time, we're going to understand. The world of Chai Olam and Chai Sha'ah, that is deeply rooted in the world of Moshe and Yehoshua. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Because our goal here, Chabura, is to understand this book, which is the key book of Tshuva and Hara'ah, as Rashi tells us, for all generations. That's what we're doing here. I will also share that for a number of historical reasons, Tanach study has been not so popular. In the days of the Tanaim and the Amoraim, Tanach was very popular. Everybody learned Tanach. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos expects that by the time you learn Mishnah, you know Tanach by heart. That's an expectation. The Amoraim in Talmud Bavli, when they quoted a pasuk, they didn't tell you where the pasuk was. The truth is, even Rashi and Tosfos on the daf, they might tell you what parak. They might throw a parak in from time to time. But they're expecting you to know the contents. That's an expectation of learning Talmud. You got to know Nevi'im. You have to know Ksub. You have to know Tanach. That's an expectation. That was the kleinigat. That was a small change. The Gemara says that any Talmud Chacham that doesn't know the 24 Sefer Tanach, it's not worth his salt. There's nothing to talk about. There's no such thing as the Talmud Chacham that doesn't know Tanach. And we'll get to some of those Mamarei Chazal a little later. But beyond that, I have a deep feeling, and you'll probably discover this as we learn more. I have a deep feeling that throughout the generations, the primary Sefer Musar and Hashkafa of the Jewish people was Tanakh. It was only really in the days of the Midrashonim that Jews started talking about Sefer Musar. The Chavis Alavavas might have been the first. There's a Sefer Musar. It's the 11th century, the 12th century. Jews learned Tanakh. That was where Musar came from. They learned Nevi'im. The Nevi'im told us how to think and how to act and how to behave. And the stories of Tanakh were our national legacy. These things were not foreign to us. They were not strange to us. That was our national legacy. Every child grew up knowing Yehoshua. Yehoshua was a household hero. Everybody knew Yehoshua. Everybody knew Shavtim. Everybody knew David and Shaul and understood the world in context of those stories. And Letzarenu Harav, we are lacking that. And it happens to be that at this stage of life, as we begin to learn Tanakh, as we begin to learn this Beresham, the Seder Be'iyun, what we are going to discover is that we're going to need to go a little bit backwards. Because we're not starting from scratch. We're not starting as 5-year-old kids. We're starting with a lot of ideas already in our heads. So we're going to need to deconstruct a little bit to reconstruct. And sometimes we're going to have to see a little bit of the end picture before getting into the details. When you teach Tanakh to little children, you can start with the pasuk. But for us, we're going to need to start a couple feet above the ground before we can appreciate what the pasuk is saying. And to that end, let's take a look at an introduction to Sefer Yehoshua. It's good for my throat. The first time that Yehoshua shows up in Tanakh is not Sefer Yehoshua. The first time that Yehoshua shows up in Tanakh is just after the Jewish people have left Mitzrayim. Marched out of Mitzrayim, sea split, Egyptians are drowned, we're on our way to Kabbalah Satar, we're on our way to Matan Torah. But there's a problem. What's the problem? Amalek. Amalek comes and he's attacking the weak ones, the ones that are straggling back of the camp. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe, you got to go fight. So Moshe, Tevi Elachem Amalek. So Moshe says to Yehoshua, I'm going to go to the top of the mountain, and I'm going to have Aaron and Hur on either side of me. I'm going to put my hands up, and then you're going to win, and if my hands go down, it's not going to be so good for you. But who's going to be leading the battle? Yehoshua. Why Yehoshua? It's our first introduction to him. Yehoshua was a slave, like everybody else in Mitzrayim. He didn't, to the best of my knowledge, he had no military experience. To the best of my knowledge, Yehoshua was another slave. What makes him qualified for this battle? And we are going to see that is Yehoshua's primary role in Sefer Yehoshua is to be the general of the army. That is his public persona, is to be general. General Yehoshua. We're going to see a little bit later that Yehoshua also, la halacha, has the status of a melech. He's a king. But he's a king who is a general. Where from does Yehoshua have the capacity to be the general of the army? Any suggestions? What do you guys say? And the Zoom Chabura, what do you say? Why is Yehoshua qualified here? Why is he qualified to be the general of an army?
But here's the answer. Wasn't he the one that walked into the water?
No, that's Nachshon.
No.
That's Nachshon min Aminadav. We're going to come back there. But what qualifies Yehoshua? This question is asked by none other than the Ramban. The Ramban says as follows. Just take a look at the bottom paragraph in the introduction. Sefer Yehoshua, Hagdamas, Milchamas Amalek. The Ramban, it's the first source at the top. Says the Ramban, V'yitachan shepachan Moshe, pen yiskaber b'charba. Moshe Rabbeinu is nervous. This is all screenshotted from Ala Torah Leruk. V'yitachan shepachan Moshe, Moshe Rabbeinu is nervous. Pen yiskaber b'charba, lest Amalek become victorious. Mibnei he'yosai am noichel acherev, mibirkas hazake. Because Amalek doesn't come from nowhere. Amalek has the right of victory by sword. Who gave Amalek the right of victory in battle? Mibirkas hazake, the bracha of the elder. Who's the elder? Yitzchak. Yitzchak had said to his Bechar, Esav, Al charbecha tichya. You're going to live by the sword. So the anacle of Esav is Amalek. Good. So Moshe Rabbeinu is very nervous about this. He's very nervous. Comes along, Amalek's not just, we know the Torah is about Amalek. Yeah, he came and jumped in the hot water rash. He tells us, good. But Amalek's not stam. Amalek is not attacking the Jewish people by random. Amalek is attacking the Jewish people because Amalek is the descendant of Esav. And we're going to see this theme over and over and over again. Where are the Jewish people headed? What's the goal? Where are we going to? Eretz Yisrael. We're going to Eretz Yisrael. What happened the last time Yaakov was on his way to Eretz Yisrael? Who came to meet him with 400 armed men? Esav. And in 40 years' time, when the Meraglim come back, they say, we can't go into Eretz Yisrael because Amalek is going to block our way. Amalek is blocking our way. Every time that the Jewish people are attempting to come to Eretz Yisrael, Esav and his descendants are in the way. There is a claim to the land of Israel that is staked out by Esav. And he's Enichlach. Chasheva Enichlach. Amalek. Very important. His grandchildren, Amalek. They are standing in the way. And Moshe knows this. He realizes this. He recognizes this. He says, if we are on our way to make sure that Eretz Yisrael is now going to be in Jewish hands, the fulfillment of the promise and the prophecy of Lazaracha etenas haaretz hazos, I'm going to give this land to your children, well, then we have a problem. Because Amalek, Esav, is in the way. And he has the schus to be victorious. That's the pasuk. Al charbecha tichya. He says, Ki ha-milchama min ha-mishpacha hazos hi harishona v'achrona liYisrael. Says the Ramban, because this war, this battle against Amalek, against Esav, is the first battle that we fight, and it is the last battle that we fight. This is the battle between the Jewish people and between Yaakov and Esav. And Amalek is the anacle of Esav. Who's the anacle of Yaakov that's going to fight this war? Who is this? So the Ramban's going to tell us. But it's a Rashi, and it's a Medrash Rabbah, and it's a Yalkut Shimoni, and it's a Gemara in a number of places. says, "Come the Chol Mishpacha Azos Yerushalayim B'Achron LeYisrael Ki Amalek Mizara Esav." Amalek is Esav. Umimena Ba Eleinu HaMilchama Bereishis Hagoyim. And from them will come the war that is at the forefront of our engagement with the nations of the world. Umizara Shel Esav Hayu Lanu Ha'Galus VaHaChurban HaAchron. And it was in our defeat at the hands of Edom, which is Esav, that the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Esav took away our second Beis HaMikdash. We are now in Golus Edom. He says, "Kasher Yom Rabbeinu, like Chazal tells us Maseches Avodah Zarah, she'anachnu hayom beGolus Edom." We are today in the Golus of Esav, the Golus of Edom. Esav who Edom. But Kasher Yinutzachu, and when we will be victorious at that point, Vayachalesh hu ve'amim rabim asherito, and Esav and all of the various nations that are together with Esav, mimenu reshalar alam, then we will be redeemed forever. Kasher Amalek, the pasuk says, "Va'alu mishim ba'artzim lishpat el har Esav." The victorious ones, the saviors, will come to win out on Har Esav. Va'yisal Hashem Amlucha, and that's when we will win. What does this have to do with Yehoshua? Says the Ramban, "V'hinei kol asher asu Moshe v'Yehoshua." Anything that is done with Moshe and Yehoshua, Barishona, at the beginning, Yasu Eliyahu u'Mashiach ben Yosef, Imzara, will be done by Mashiach. Sorry, will be done by Eliyahu Navi and Mashiach ben Yosef, Imzarim, with their children. Al Kain, his Amitz Moshe V'Dabra, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu made a big effort here. My dear friends, what Shevet is Yehoshua from? Ephraim. Ephraim is the son of Yosef. Moshe chooses Yehoshua because Yehoshua is Mizar Shel Yosef. That is what qualifies him to lead this battle. That is why he is fighting this war against Amalek. And that is why he is going to take the Jewish people to Eretz Yisrael. Because he is Mashiach ben Yosef. Yeah.
But there are other people from Shevet Ephraim.
So apparently, amongst the people in Shevet Ephraim and Menashe, because that's both, Yehoshua is the most qualified. Why Dafne Yehoshua from everyone else? The Ramban doesn't tell us. But that he should be from Shevet Yosef, unquestionably. To fight this war against Amalek, undoubtedly. Says the Ramban, this battle that Yehoshua fights is the same battle that will repeat itself over and over and over and over and over and over again throughout history of the children of Yosef, and we will see not just the children of Yosef, but also Binyamin. This is the world of Rachel, against Esav. The children of Rachel have a vendetta against Esav, against Amalek. Let's run through Jewish history for a moment here. Yehoshua fights against Amalek. Good. Who's the next person to fight against Amalek? Shaul. Shaul is from Shevet Binyamin. Fast forward a couple of centuries. The next war that we have against Amalek is Purim. Haman Ha'agagi. Who fights against him? Mordechai and Esther from Shevet Binyamin. Yishimini. Descendants of Shaul HaMelech. The battle comes back to them. Over and over and over again throughout history, it's the Bnei Rachel that are fighting against Amalek. Now we'll discuss when we get to Sefer Shoftim. We'll spend a lot of time in Shmuel. We'll spend a lot of time understanding the difference between Yosef and Binyamin. But Bnei Rachel are the fighters against Amalek. Yeah.
Was Yehoshua had any relationship with Moshe by this time? Was his servant like?
Torah doesn't tell us
I
yet.
don't know about it.
Torah doesn't tell us yet. We'll see later. We'll speak about Parshat Shlach. All the Rishonim deal with the question why in Parshat Shlach that Vayikra Moshe Moshe ben Nun Yehoshua, that he called Moshe ben Nun Yehoshua, but here he's called Yehoshua already. So at what point did Moshe change his name to Yehoshua? So it seems to be that they already had a chavrusa by now, right? That they had some level of relationship, but we don't know that. Meaning, and we know later on Yehoshua is by Har Sinai. He's standing halfway up the mountain. When Moshe comes down with the luchos, Yehoshua is the only other Jew in the world to ever see the luchos. Moshe and Yehoshua. We're going to get there. That'll be next week. We're going to talk about Yeshua's job in the world of Torah. But let's talk about Yeshua's job in the world of Milchama. Yeshua is he who fights against Amalek. Now, this theme of Yeshua being the person that is fighting against Amalek, the person that is leading the battle against Esav, that Yosef is he who leads the battle against Esav, is found all throughout the Rishon. The concept of Mashiach ben Yosef is mentioned like twice in Shas. Mentioned throughout the Zohar in many, many, many places, and we're going to talk about this in many, many, many places. This is the Gra, and this is the Ramchal, and this is Rav Kook, and it's everywhere. Certainly in the last few generations. We'll give a couple of very important and relevant Maramakomis in a few minutes. But the Ralbag, I think in English they call them Gershonides. It's not a very commonly learned Rishon, but the Ralbag points out, this is in our Barbanel, we'll get there as well. The Ralbag points out the pasuk. The pasuk tells us it's Parsha 2 weeks ago ish. Parsha Zuzah Sabracha doesn't really have a week, right? Parsha Zuzah Sabracha gets the short end of the stick, right? But the pasuk tells us what was the bracha that Moshe gives to Yosef. Bechar Shara Hadar Lai. Bechar Shara Hadar Lai. He is the Bechar, the firstborn, Shara, his ox, Hadar Lai. It's glorious for him. Who is this glorious ox of Yosef? Yosef, who is Alei Shur, rise up, ox. What is the ox, right? We've been schmoozing about that, right? What's pshat in this ox? We're going to do a lot more with it. Says the Ralbag, Esho Shiramis Bazeh Al Yehoshua. When Moshe Rabbeinu is giving a bracha to the children of Yosef, B'char Shara Hadar Lai, V'karni Re'im Karnav, he says, Esho Shiramis Bazeh Al Yehoshua Shahayim Yishevet Ephraim. He's talking about Yehoshua from the tribe of Ephraim. V'inei Haya Lai Ziv Hadar. He has this amazing radiance. Vaya Karni Re'im Karnav, the horns of the Re'im, the massive beast. L'nagach Bahem, to gore with them. Heina v'heina, here and there. B'gayim asher kavash artzam ad kitzesah. All the nations that Yeshua is going to conquer. 7 nations of Eretz Canaan. V'amar Moshe Rabbeinu says, Ki Eloheim rivavais Ephraim, v'heim rivavais Ephraim, v'heim alfei Menashe. This is the rivavais Ephraim, the multitudes of Ephraim. The multitudes of Ephraim is all that Yehoshua was going to achieve. Ki me Ephraim yotza Yehoshua. From Ephraim comes Yehoshua. V'heim alfei Menashe. Ki mi Menashe yotza gamkein mishi yatzlech b'milchama v'hu Gidon. We'll see Gidon in Sefer Yehoshua. Gidon is from Menashe. The warriors of the Jewish people, the fighters of the Jewish people, are coming from Ephraim and Menashe. We'll get to some of those details a little later, just in the interest of time. The strength of Yehoshua, and we're going to see this and develop this. And I'm going to ask you, Mechila, because what you're going to get from today's introduction is going to be many more questions than answers. But that's why this is a long-term project, because we're going to develop this. What you're going to see as we develop this further is that the world of Moshe and Yehoshua, the world of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, don't always work well together. They don't correlate well. And when one is being matzlech, the other is not. this challenge of Moshe ben Yosef, Moshe ben David, of Moshe and Yehoshua, goes way back. It's Yosef and his brothers. They didn't get along so well together. And it's Rachel and Leah, who are in deep competition with each other. And we'll understand what all of that means as we develop further. But I want to show you Meshech Chochmah because this past year we were learning Meshech Chochmahs. There's a devastating Meshech Chochmah. Just before Matan Torah, Hashem tells Moshe that I'm going to come to you Ba'av Ha'anan, with a thick cloud on Har Sinai, so that the Jewish people will witness this thing called Matan Torah. V'gam b'cha yaminu la'olam, and they should also believe in you forever. Who's the also? Who's the also? Says the Meshech Chochmah, Perush, Ki b'kriyas Yamsuf yaminu b'Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu split the sea. You walked out of Yamsuf, Moshe Rabbeinu is your hero. Psst, Moshe Rabbeinu, gewaltig. After that, the Jewish people came to Refidim. And what did they do in Refidim? They fought a war against Amalek. Where was Moshe during the war? He's up on the mountain. Who's leading the battle? Yehoshua. He says, "She'ein novel zora shel Esav ela biyad zora shel Yosef." You cannot conquer Esav unless you are from Yosef. Only Yosef can beat Esav. Lacham Yehoshua. So Yehoshua fights. Niskara emunasam b'Moshe. And the Jewish people lost faith in Moshe. They lost faith in Moshe, their great leader Moshe, who had just split the sea for them. Yehoshua is the one fighting the battle. What's that guy doing up at the top of the mountain? Putting his hands up and down. Yehoshua, Gibor, he's our leader. Lachain Amar. Therefore Hashem says to Moshe, I'm coming to you in the thick of the cloud. I will constrain myself, inextricably constrained, in a way that Moshe Rabbeinu usually did not need. Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to Hashem face to face. But Hashem comes to Moshe Rabbeinu in a way so that the people will be able to appreciate how I'm speaking to you. Those of you that are interested in the further exploration of this is the Hakdama of the Meshech Chochmah to Sefer Yehoshua. Not this piece, but he expands on this immensely, how the Jewish people appreciated Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah at Matan Torah. He says, "V'gam b'cha yamin l'olam," that they should also believe in you, and that they shouldn't lose faith in you like they did following Kriyas Yamsuf during the Milchama of Amalek. And my dear friends, the war against Amalek and the Kriyas Yamsuf were two totally different modalities of Jewish success. How did the Jewish people succeed at Yamsuf? How did we win at Yamsuf? Hashem yelachem lachem va'atem tacharish. Hashem's going to fight for you, and you? Nothing. Don't even daven. Hashem says to Moshe, "Matitzak." Don't even do nothing. Daven el b'nei Yisrael, just tell them to go. I take care of this. And Pasuk says that Jewish people saw Ki Hashem nilcham lahem in Mitzrayim. Kodesh Baruch Hu is fighting. Kodesh Baruch Hu is fighting the war. That's the word of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the way of Bnei Leah. That's the way of open miracles. How does Yehoshua beat Amalek? Save the Lachem Amalek. Go and fight against Amalek. The world of Yehoshua is the world of a general of the army, of Tzahal. It's the world of sticks and swords and spears and guns and rifles and tanks. It's the world of Yehoshua. go and fight a war. It's true Moshe Rabbeinu is at the top of the mountain. The backbone to success, still Moshe Rabbeinu. But the war is fought on, it's on the ground. The war is fought on the ground. Chabura, we need to understand here that there are two modalities of Geula. Geula number one is the world of miracles. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. But Geula number two is hard fought and hard won battles with sticks and spears, with rifles and tanks. That's Yehoshua. And when the Jewish people witnessed for a moment that there was a fighter, a lochem, so then they lost faith in Moshe. So Hashem says to Moshe, no, it is so important that the Jewish people believe in you, because you are going to teach them Torah, that I need to make myself available to them in giving you the Torah. Jewish people need to see that I'm giving you the Torah. Otherwise, the whole concept of Torah doesn't exist. Jewish people need to witness this. This is the Rambam in Yisrael Torah, is that the entirety of Torah has to be given to Moshe in a way that the Jewish people trust Moshe. But in terms of the Goel, the Redeemer, Chabura, Moshe Rabbeinu as a Redeemer is already having problems now. He drags them out of Mitzrayim, and for 40 years they complain. We're going to see this in Sefer Yehoshua. Yehoshua is the only leader of the Jewish people ever in the history of the Jewish people that never dealt with insurrection. Never once. Yehoshua is loved and beloved. One instant, we'll get there. Yehoshua is the only leader of the Jewish people that everybody's makabel. It's makabel. For an instance in history. For a moment in history. For a moment in history, there is an opening where Yehoshua is, where Mashiach ben Yosef is revealed. We're going to get there, probably not this week. But the Ramchal is going to explain to us in Maimar HaGeula that this happens for small windows of time throughout Jewish history. That there are small windows of opportunity that the Jewish people appreciate Mashiach ben Yosef, the world of Yosef HaTzadik, and what Yosef does. By the way, it never starts like that. Never ever starts like that. Think about the people that represent the leadership of Yosef throughout the generations. Think for a moment about Mordechai and Esther. The end of the Megillah tells you that at the end of the story that Mordechai was Rotze l'Roiv Echav. Most people held of Mordechai at the end of the story. The rest of the story, forget it. Meshugana sends Esther off to be queen. Meshugana. He's like hanging out by the palace every day. He's schmoozing with the gods. Call that a gadol hadar? Something's wrong with you. But the end of the story, Rotze l'Roiv Echav. There's a sefer that was written. Much of this, by the way, and there's reason for this. There's a sefer that was written called Kol Hatar. Anybody heard of the sefer Kol Hatar? Kol Hatar was published most recently by Rav Mendel Kasher. It was originally written by Rav Hillel Shklov. Rav Hillel Shklov was one of the Talmidim from the Beis Medrash of the Gra. The Kol Hatar is the Vilna Gaon's vision of Geula. It's where the Gra discusses in most elaborate detail the world of Mashiach ben Yosef and the world of Mashiach ben David. It was based on this idea that the Talmidei HaGra moved from Vilna to Eretz Yisrael. At the same time that the Baal Shem Tov was inspiring Hasidim, really the Maggid Mezrich was at that point aspiring Hasidim to move to Tzfas. So you had a group from the Gra that settled around Yerushalayim, and a group of the Baal Shem Tov that settled around Tzfas. Which is why Eretz Yisrael today is dominated by the Minhag Hasidim and the Minhag HaGra. That's why in Eretz Yisrael, everybody does Birkas Kohanim every day. Sfardim do Birkas Kohanim every day in Chutz La'aretz, but the Minhag of Ashkenazim was never like that. In Eretz Yisrael today, everybody does Birkas, almost every community does Birkas Kohanim almost every day. Because the Hasidim that came to Eretz Yisrael and the Talmidei HaGra that came to Eretz Yisrael followed the opinions of their Rebbeim that in Eretz Yisrael you should. But the Gra wanted to already establish that in Chutz La'aretz. It's a long story, a long history for that, not for now. But Eretz Yisrael is Minhag HaGra and Minhag Hasidim. It's the minhag of those people that felt already in the 1700s the world of Mashiach ben Yosef, the world of Yehoshua ben Nun, the world of returning to Eretz Yisrael, which, my dear friends, is the story of Sefer Yehoshua. We began by saying that this Sefer is, all of Nevi'im is relevant. There is no more Sefer that is more relevant to our generation than Sefer Yehoshua. We are the dar of the return to Eretz Yisrael, the reconquering, the resettling of Eretz Yisrael. Now, Yehoshua, and we'll see this, tragically, does not finish the job. Mashiach ben Yosef never finishes the job. That's the way for David Amalek. Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben David finishes. Yehoshua does not finish. The end of Sefer Yehoshua, by the way, the very end of Sefer Yehoshua, we'll see that, is the burying of the bones of Yosef. Yosef, who was carried for 40 years in the Midbar. You might remember that during Makas Choshen, Rashi tells us, the Jewish people all gathering Egyptian riches. What's Moshe Rabbeinu doing? He's getting the bones of Yosef. Because you cannot leave Mitzrayim, you cannot go to Eretz Yisrael without Yosef. You cannot fight Amalek without Yosef. You cannot inherit Eretz Yisrael without Yosef. We don't have a ton of time. But we'll do that next week. Why is it that Yosef is the person that does this? Who instituted that Yosef is the person that fights against Amalek? Dreams? Before that. Long before that. Yaakov Avinu. This is the Tchunas HaNefesh. This is who Yosef is. Yosef is the foil to Esav. Yaakov has just had his 11th son, his son by the name of Yosef. He's had 10 children before. For the first time, his beloved wife Rachel has a baby. His name is Yosef. Vayi kasher yalda Rachel es Yosef. When Rachel gives birth to Yosef, Vayomer Yaakov el Lavan. Right after, Yaakov says to Lavan, Shalcheni ve'elcha, send me and I will go el mekoimi ule'arti, to my place and to my land. I have Yosef, now I can go back to Eretz Yisrael. Why did he run away from Eretz Yisrael? Because Esau wants to kill him. So now he has Yosef, he says, now I can go back. Well, now he's not going to kill me? Now I have Yosef. Says Rashi, Mishnah shel Esav. When the Satan of Esav, who's the Satan to Esav? Who's the foil of Esav? Yosef. Mishnah shel Esav. Shenemar, like the Pasuk says in Avadia, Beis Yaakov Eish uveis Yosef lehava. What's the end of the Pasuk? Beis Esav le Kash. The house of Yosef is the flame drawn from the fire of Yaakov, and the house of Esav is like straw. Eish b'lo la'ava eina shelet l'merachak. A fire without a flame has no ability to spread. What's a fire without a flame? It's like a coal. It's burning hot. But a burning hot coal, the wind will blow, it does nothing. It needs a flame in order to spread. That's why it's dangerous, right? A coal by itself does very little. It'll keep things hot. Keep things hot for a very long time. But in order to spread, it needs a flame. Yosef is the flame of Yaakov. Whatever Yaakov is doing in the world, Yosef makes it happen. Mishanolad Yosef, batach v'rotzat l'shuv. The moment that Yosef is born, Yaakov says, now I can go back to Eretz Yisrael. Not afraid of Yosef anymore.
But during the encounter, he puts him in the back.
That's true. We'll get there. He's still a baby. Yosef himself is vulnerable. The concept of Yosef is what allows Yaakov to continue. Yosef is Yaakov's most protected asset.
Why? Because it's from the most favorite woman.
Ah,
Like he had Veniat Shimon, the warrior.
right. By the way, we know Shimon and Levi, they go butcher the city of Shechem. But Yosef can fight against Esav.
Like, so he saw
Why?
in his wow. Like, where did Yaakov find that?
Very good. So the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev, which details the story of Yaakov appointing Yosef, gives him a katan pasim, new fancy clothes. The brothers begin to hate him because of it. Why does he do all of that? Just because he loves Rachel? I think today we call that bad parenting. It's obviously not what's going on. Says the Sforno, Eile told us Yaakov, these are the generations of Yaakov. Who are the generations of Yaakov? Yosef. Yosef is the continuation of Yaakov. Says the Sforno, Me'oresav v'yiladei yoim alav achar sheyeshev sham. This is the story of Yaakov after he gets to Eretz Yisrael. Ki me'az sheyatze mibeis aviv, from the moment that he left Yitzchak's home, hayu inyanai k'may kairas avisav begalas avisenu begalas rishon. This is a tremendous story. This is going to give you chills. From when Yaakov left Yitzchak's home, he went into Galus. It's exactly what happened to Jewish history. We too were kicked out of Eretz Yisrael. We too went through Galus. Begalus Rishon, the first exile. Me'az shechazar el eretz migurei aviv, and then Yaakov returns to the land of his fathers. This is Bayisheni, says the Sforno. El eretz migurei aviv, hayu karosav k'may shekar lavasenu Bayisheni. This is the story of coming back. We're going to develop this a lot more. He says, "V'chorbanai v'galasenu leketz hayamin," and when we left Eretz Yisrael after the Churban Bayisheni, that is the story of Yosef and his brothers going down to Mitzrayim. Which means, and the Ramchal develops this immensely, that everything that happened in the Exodus from Egypt will happen when we leave this Galus. We're in Galus Mitzrayim round 2. Galus Edom is the parallel to Galus Mitzrayim. This is the Ramban, that Eliyahu and Moshe ben Yosef will take us out from this Galus, like Moshe and Yeshua took us out from the one in Mitzrayim. What does all of this have to do with Eile told the Yaakov? This is the story of all of Jewish history, says the Sforno. Yosef ben Sheva Esrei Shana Hayara Esachav Batzon. Yosef was 17 years old. These are 5 impossible words to translate from Hebrew. Hayara Esachav Batzon. What does that mean? Hayara, he was a shepherd. Esachav Batzon. What does Esachav Batzon mean? Says Unkelus, it means im achai ba'ana, with his brothers. Esmin means im. Says the Sforno, no, it doesn't. Hayara esachav batzon. Yaakov makes Yosef the ro'eh of his brothers. B'mireh hatzon. He was the manig and the moreh. Yaakov says Yosef will lead the brothers. Because as we know, and as apparently Yaakov knew, Yosef has a unique knack for leadership. The end of his career is leading the entirety of Mitzrayim. By the way, Yosef is the first Jewish royal. It's not quite Paro, but basically, Yosef is the most powerful Jew, probably until David Amalek. Maybe Shlomo Amalek. But Yosef, this incredibly powerful ruling Jew, there are two things about him that we need to understand. Thing number one about Yosef is that his entire life is in Mitzrayim. He lives amongst the Goyim. He's embedded in that world. Somehow or another, he still remains Yosef. Yosef HaTzadik. He doesn't cave to all of the Yetzaharas and all of the pressures. He remains Yosef HaTzadik. But beyond that, Yosef engages in the material world as a leader and as a ruler, as a government official, as Malchus. You might be familiar with the medrash at the beginning of Parshas Vayigash. Vayigash elav Yehuda. Yehuda approaches Yosef. He doesn't know that he's talking to his brother. So the medrash quotes on the pasuk, the kings are battling each other. Yehuda and Yosef. Those are the kings of the Jewish people. Yehuda hasn't even nearly recognized Malchus. Yosef is already in charge of the largest economy and nation in the world. Yosef is Malchus. That's what Yosef represents. He represents that which his tati Yaakov always struggled with. Because you might remember that Yaakov had an older brother named Esav. And if you would have asked anybody at the time, which one of these two guys makes a better leader? You have a fledgling Jewish nation. Who is going to be the leader of that nation? The answer is Esav, unquestionably. Pshat in the Psukim, Chabura, you have to understand this well. Pshat in the Psukim is that Yitzchak chooses Esav because it's a sensible choice. He's an ish yedei tzayid, he's an ish sadeh. He knows how to hunt, he knows how to work. He sees in Esav the leadership of his father Avram, of being able to spread Judaism, to spread monotheism, which is the goal of Abraham, to spread monotheism far and wide. That is what Esav is going to achieve. It is why when Yaakov comes to steal the brachas, he's stealing them. He does not feel worthy. He doesn't feel like he is the Melech of Eretz Yisrael. He's not the Melech of Eretz Yisrael. Why should he be the Melech? He's an Ish Tam Yosef Aleph. Now, he's not a whip, he's not a weakling. He gets to a well, there's like a minion of farmers that are waiting around for somebody to push it. He's like, he's got no problem. He's not a weakling, he is not a whip. But Ish Tchunas HaNefesh is Ish Tam Yosef Aleph. I will be the spiritual backbone of the Jewish people. The physical backbone of the Jewish people, the person that's going to be Malchus Hashem into the world, who's going to be the driver of royalty, of kingship, of eternity. Who's that? Esav. Rivka knows that it's not going to work out that way. So she sneaks Yaakov in. But now Yaakov has a problem. Because Yaakov does not have the Tchunas HaNefesh to do that. He doesn't want to. It's not his driving force. It's not who he is. Yaakov a tzaddik. That's what he does in his life. He sits, he learns, he inspires. He doesn't create a nation. He creates people, lives, neshamas, shvatim. But his whole life he's looking over his shoulder, saying, I am not worthy of this Bechorah because Esav is the better leader. Now, by the way, Esav, indeed, all the Midrashei Chazal that describe all of the wickedness of Esav, we have to understand that what Chazal are doing there is understanding where Esav went to and then plugging it back into the Psukim. Pshat in the Psukim, the Kotzker says to us. This is recorded in Emes Ve'emunah Mipi HaShmua. I don't even know who the Shmua is, but this is going to blow your mind. They record this. I have this in the new copy of Emes Ve'emunah. This comes from an older copy. But I think they have better source material there. But it was published like last year. But listen to these words, because this is going to blow your mind. Says the Kotzker, he says, Esav lo haya ikar mugusham. Esav was not like a grub farmer. Halovesh chulza mitziyar, walking around with a colored shirt. You know, talking to Polish Jews in the 19th century, right? Walking around with like a tie-dye shirt. Umishalech Yaakov v'roich hazirim, walking around barefoot and farming pigs. Esav wasn't a grubber mitch. He wasn't gross. Esav hayom gadol zok in a pace. He had a beard in pace. Manig Eda, he had a big chasidus. Mashmiya Torah b'shalashudus. He was saying very like shalashudus that murdered it. What was the problem with Esav? Yaakov, Tzaddik Hadar, he disagreed with Yaakov being the Tzaddik Hadar, and he refused to bow to his brother Yaakov as being the greater Tzaddik. Esav was undoubtedly the greater leader. He was far more charismatic. He could carry the message of Torah far further. He might even have been a bigger Talmid Chacham. But Yaakov was deeper connected to Hashem. But his whole life, Yaakov is looking over his shoulder saying, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. How am I going to be the melech that was supposed to be my brother? We were supposed to do this together. It's Ramban. We're supposed to do it together. Mommy knows better than me. She had a nevuah. Shnei goyim b'vinech, shnei lumim b'ma'echi pari. We're not going to work out well together. Eventually, one day, maybe, we'll talk about that. But right now, no. But how am I going to do this? How am I going to be the Melech on Eretz Yisrael? I have a Yosef. I have a Yosef. The moment Yosef is born, Yaakov looks at him and goes, this is the child that will be able to be Melech. He's the Melech. I will put him in charge of the family. He has the Tchunas HaNefesh to lead, to fight, to be the physical leader of the Jewish people. That's who Yosef is. The physical leader of the Jewish people. The one that's going to win the wars, fight the battles, take the Jewish people into Eretz Yisrael. Moshe ben Yosef. Moshe ben Yosef, that's why Yehoshua is fighting Amalek. Shmuel knows it, that's why Shaul is fighting Agag. Mordechai and Esther know it, that's why they're fighting Haman. Sitna Shal Esav comes from Bnei Rachel. Some of the Midrashim have the version Sitna Shal Esav Bnei Rachel, some have it Yosef. We'll talk about it again. But understand that the Tchunas HaNefesh of Esav, of Uncle Esav, finds its way back into the Jewish people in the world of Yosef. But it's only with Yosef that you can get to Eretz Yisrael. It's the only way in. You cannot go in without Yosef. Moshe Rabbeinu had to take the bones of Yosef. You can't go without Yosef. You cannot conquer Eretz Yisrael without somebody saying, I will be the Melech. That's the world of Yehoshua ben Nun, and that is the world of Yosef HaTzadik. I'll share with you just one last thing. Because we mentioned that the acceptance of Yehoshua ben Nun was absolute during his lifetime. Meaning during his leadership. Not before that. It was not clear that Yehoshua was going to be the leader, even to Moshe. Even Moshe, who appoints him to be the general of the army, he doesn't know that Yehoshua is going to be the leader. Eldad and Medad have a prophecy about that. Moshe doesn't know it. Mordechai is only accepted at the end of the story. Says the Kol HaTorah in the name of the Vilna Gaon. I'll share this with you, and this is going to blow your mind. Because what we are talking about is the physical, natural leadership of the Jewish people returning to Eretz Yisrael and taking on Jewish culture and Jewish rights to our own sovereignty and being our own people. That koyach that exists in the world is almost impossible to discern for the world and for the Jewish people. Like the pasuk says, "Vayakir Yosef es echav." Yosef recognizes his brothers. V'heim lo hikiruhu. They did not recognize him. Says Rav Hillel of Shklov in the name of the Vilna Gaon. He says, "V'zoi achas mitchunosai shel Yosef." This is the world of Yosef. V'loi rak b'dar, not just in his generation. Ki ima b'chol dar v'dar, in every single generation. Asher hu Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef arises. Makir es echav, he recognizes his brothers. V'heim lo makirun. So his brothers do not recognize him. The drive of the Jewish people to take sovereignty and leadership and return to Eretz Yisrael is something that we as Jews fight against. We're not talking politics here, but it goes all the way from the world of Mashiach ben Yosef into the way of day-to-day politics today. That there are Jews on the right and the left of religion and politics, all of whom have caches of why the Jewish people are making our way back to Eretz Yisrael. From the right of the right to the left of the left, there are Jews v'heim lo hikiruhu, that do not recognize the natural return of the Jewish people back to Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gra Umay says Satanhu. This is the world of Satan, meaning there is a force in the world that is holding us back from that. Hamastir es tchunasav shel Mashiach ben Yosef she'ein makirim be'ikvos Mashiach v'gam mezalzelim bahem ba'avodas hara. People do not recognize the natural return of the Jewish people to Eretz Yisrael, and we make fun of it. Something that we don't take seriously. That's the world of Yehoshua. That's the world of Mashiach ben Yosef. That's the world of the return of the Jewish people to Eretz Yisrael. And I know that I just said a lot of information, and this should probably, please God, between this week and next week, there'll be many things stewing on your mind. But Baruch Hashem, this is an open. It's a Pesach. This is a doorway into the world of Sefer Yehoshua, to the Mashiach ben Yosef, into the world of learning Nevi'im, Be'ir. As we, probably not next week, we have one more Hagdama to deal with next week, Torah Sheba'al Peh. As we get to, in 2 weeks' time, Sefer Yehoshua inside, I'm going to request that everybody, at the very least, has read through the first parak of Yehoshua in English. If you can do it in Hebrew, even better. And if you can do it with Rashi, even better. If you can do it with Rashi and the Malbim, even better. But at the very least, take a look at the first parak in English. In English, Mama Lashem. Right? Take a look at in English, and Hashem, we will go right from there. Yeah.
Did Yehoshua know that? You said that everyone loved him and everything, but did he even know that? Because it seems that he didn't even appreciate or knew that. He had this fear in him as a fresh leader or young leader.
Yes.
You know? So
we'll get there. We'll get to what's going on in Yeshua's head a little bit
constantly, it seems like he's constantly checking his, how the people see him.
So the very short answer to that,
the whole book, he's like.
the very short answer to that is that Yehoshua knows that the moment that Mashiach ben Yosef denies that they're on the outside, but there's something deeper on the inside, the whole story is over. It happened most devastatingly in Chodesh Mar Cheshvan, this month. Wrote about this shtickle in the weekly. Yosef deals with this extensively in Chodesh Mar Cheshvan with Yerovam ben Nevat. Yerovam ben Nevat, who breaks off from Malchus Beis David. Off he goes. And that is the end of Jewish unity ad hayom hazeh. The Arizal says Yerovam ben Nevat was Mashiach ben Yosef of his generation. He's not the only one. We'll get there when we see this in greater detail, because this story is the whole of Tanach. Yosef and Yehoshua, Rachel and Leah, Moshe, David. We're going to see this over and over again. There was a dream and a goal. There was a dream and a goal of David being Melech Yisrael. Who was going to be his Sar Tzava? He was supposed to be his Sar Tzava before he got killed. No, before that. His best friend, Yonatan ben Shaul. Yonatan ben Shaul. There's been Rachel and Bnei Leah. David HaMelech was supposed to marry and have a child from whom? Michal bat Shaul. The next generation was supposed to be Bnei Rachel and Bnei Leah together. Lalach. We're going to get there. The blundering of this is a theme throughout Jewish history. But Eretz Yisrael cannot be entered without Yosef, without Bnei Rachel. That's the beginning. Yeah.
You seem to kind of reject the idea that it's because it was Rachel, it's the son of Rachel, but Yaakov is trying to achieve something. He chooses Rachel.
Yes.
And presumably it's this exact mission.
Yes.
Lavan gets in the way.
Yes.
But of course a call, presumably.
Yes.
In some ways recognizing. And so it is not necessarily because he recognized, it's because Yosef's the first child of Rachel.
Yes. But Yosef inherits all of this from Rachel.
She has qualities. She has qualities by herself.
Where is Rachel when Yaakov meets her? Where's Rachel? She's by the well. Where's Leah?
At home.
She's at home. Right? Yaakov looks at Leah and says, I know that. That's me. I don't need that one. I need this one. This is the one that I need the one by the well. That's the one that I need. Zohar Kodesh explains, and this is Rav Charlap speaks about this extensively in Meimarim. You'll see this in the source sheet over here. Rav Charlap speaks about this extensively. Speaks in the Zohar that Rachel is Alma de Isgalia, the revealed world, and Leah is Alma de Iskasia, the hidden world. Leah's entire world is internal. Rachel's entire world is external. This theme carries throughout the entirety of Tanakh. It is why Bnei Rachel are always physically beautiful. Rachel is the more beautiful of the sisters. Yosef is exceedingly good looking. Shaul is head and shoulders above everybody. Esther is chosen from everyone. Bnei Rachel are physically gorgeous. That's their world. Bnei Leah are always hidden and mysterious. Shmuel looks at him, takes one peek at the guy and goes, that's the king. David has to pour the oil out like 7 times, and then do you have anyone else? Anybody else? No. Bnei Leah is hidden. Bnei Leah is hidden. We're going to see this over and over again. This is the word of Torah and the word of Tefillah, and this is the word of Rachel and Leah, and Meshach ben Yosef, Meshach ben David, and Yosef and Yehuda. In many ways, Yehoshua, Shoftim, Shmuel, and Malachim are this theme expanded over a number of sorts. Many caveats and many details, all of them relevant to us. But the first thing to know is that in order to get into Eretz Yisrael, you need Yosef. You need Yehoshua. Next week, Be'ez Hashem, we'll talk about Yehoshua as not the opposite of Moshe, but the continuation of Moshe. And that's the word of Torah Shabbat Peh. Thank you so much and have a wonderful night.
Let's check it out.
What?
Let's check it out.